Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Clockedin with me, your host, Jordan Edwards. I'm thrilled to have you tune in as we dive into the dynamic world of productivity, success, and stories of incredible individuals who've mastered the art of getting things done. Whether you're commuting, hitting the gym, or just relaxing at home, this podcast is the go-to source for inspiration and actionable tips to level up your productivity game. I'm on a mission to unravel the secrets of those who seem to effortlessly manage their time and achieve their goals. So if you're ready to clock in and unlock your full potential, you're in the right place. We've got a lineup of amazing guests, industry experts, and thought leaders who will share their insights and strategies to help us crush your to-do list and make the most out of every moment. Get ready to get inspired, motivated, and equipped with the tools you need to supercharge your productivity. This is Clocked In with Jordan Edwards. Let's dive in. Hey, what's going on, guys? We got a special guest today here. We have Ron Reich. He's a business coach and a marketing consultant. And Ron, I'm so excited to have you on the Clocked In podcast. So my first question is America the best place to live?
Wow, just you're starting out with heaters here. That is a loaded question. Well, so obviously the answer is, of course, it depends. For some people, America is an awesome place to live. For other people, America is not the best place to live. I actually have a client who she currently lives in Spain, and she's actually denouncing her American citizenship. So
Oh,
she does
wow.
not think America is the best place to live. Um, as I know we'll talk about this, I've spent a lot of time over the last few years living in South America, specifically in Colombia, and that is an amazing place to live. And so I really love spending time there. I'm going to be spending a lot of time there in the future as well. Currently, this moment, I am in the United States. So I am going to hedge with my answer. I really say that being having a U.S. passport is overall a very, very good thing, and being able to enjoy the benefits of being a U.S. citizen is a good thing, and spending a lot of time outside the U.S. is also very good. So
Yeah,
I
I
don't
would.
know.
The
My
reason
answer
I
is I'm
bring
not sure. To each his own. Go ahead.
Absolutely. Because I think it's the reason I wanted to bring this up is because I feel like it's something that a lot of people are starting to think about. They're
Hmm.
considering it with the cost of living and all these different expenses.
Hmm. Hmm.
And like even this year, I was able to live in Europe for 7 weeks. So me and my fiance would go travel around and then we come back
Hmm.
to America. And it was such an eye-opening experience, but it's not always, hey, I want to go live there, but it's
Right.
like it's good to get the taste. And I
Yeah,
think
yeah,
just
for sure.
travel in general is super important.
Yeah, I would really say for a lot of the people listening to this, the thing I am very passionate about is I do think unless you have specific reasons to be living in the United States, the whole idea that if you can essentially make dollars in the US and then live abroad, this idea called geo-arbitrage, which I heard Tim Ferriss talk about many, many, many years ago. There is a lot of there's a lot of benefits to doing that. That it really is something that I would really encourage kind of everybody to at least be open to experimenting with spending a little bit of time possibly living in another country for sure.
Absolutely. And it's this idea that the geo arbitrage is basically this idea of making US dollars. So it might be
Hmm.
someone who works remote or has a remote business, and then they
Hmm.
might live for some of their time in a Thailand or a South America or a
Hmm.
Europe or somewhere just because the dollar is the strongest or very
Yes.
strong in that regard. So it gives you a good hedge.
Yeah, exactly. So the idea would be that yeah, essentially you can, if you're making money in US dollars, where the cost of living in places like South America, Southeast Asia, parts of Europe, it's just a lot less expensive than it is in the US. So you can literally go there, live like a king, probably possibly a better quality of living, or at least as good as a quality of living as you are in the US, but you would be able to you'd have a lot of money left over. It'd be a lot less expensive. So there's a lot of different ways you can go about go about doing it. So for example, if I was so if you were I'm 44 years old. If you're a younger person listening to this, I would highly encourage you to consider doing this kind of thing because literally you could just the fastest way to become wealthy is by saving is saving a
Yeah.
lot of money. You could like go to live in Colombia for a little while, maybe you could live nicely off of like $2,000 a month,
Oh,
let's
wow.
say. Maybe okay, that would be nice, that'd be fine. And you could live like a king, kind of like $3,000 to $5,000 a month, like maximum $5,000 a month. So if you're making even $100,000 a year, if you're making $10,000, $15,000 a month, if you're able to save $5,000 to $10,000 a month, do that for a couple of years, and all of a sudden you're a wealthy person, and it can just snowball from there.
You're building the wealth exponentially quicker than
Literal
you would
exponential
have.
wealth. Uh-huh.
Yeah, and then you would have trying to make it by. Like I have a lot of friends in New York right now, and they're spending 6, 7 grand a month, and that's just to get by and live.
First,
And it's like a small
a hundred
apartment. Yeah.
percent. Yeah, just do the math. And that's the thing. Like, do your friends have jobs, or are they like online entrepreneur types that don't need to be in New
So
York?
some of them are a lot of them. So the big thing for me is like anyone who's living in New York and is my friend, I'm like, you better be a mandatory live in New York kind of guy. Like
Yeah,
some of them
yeah,
are in
totally
real
agree.
estate, some of them are in finance where it's in office
Got
every
it.
day. I'm like, okay, makes sense. Like that's
Yeah, yeah,
fine.
yeah.
But do not live in New York and be like, hey, I'm a virtual guy. I can do whatever I want. And it's like,
I totally agree with you. Like, I totally agree with you because, yeah, I mean, if you're into like big cities, you could go to like I've never actually been there, but like Sao Paulo, Brazil, it's like a big city.
massive
Like
city. Yeah.
go there. Like go to Bogota, big city, like and live literally, yeah, again, your live on $3,000 a month and use that other four
And be able
thousand
to
dollars a
save the
month.
rest.
Yeah. Mhm.
Absolutely. So, how did you even get involved with online entrepreneurship and marketing and coach? How did you even get started with that?
So my quick story there is that I was actually in law school. This was back in 2004, 2005. And I kind of had this intuition that being a lawyer wasn't really going to be my destiny. And so I'd go to the bookstore all the time, and I always would find myself like in the business books, the
Yeah.
business section of the bookstore. And then I one day I found a book by this guy named Dan Kennedy, who is this legendary marketing guru expert. And at the time, I read his books, and he would talk about this idea of information marketing. He's like, yeah, the way to do it is you want to sell information. This was really before internet marketing or online marketing was
Yes.
really a thing. This was like direct response marketing, information marketing. And this is when we actually would like sell courses, and we would send out home study courses. Like we would ship people a box of stuff, for example. So really that was my initial kind of gateway into the online marketing world. My first ever product that I released was actually a product on how to do good in law school. Talk about what you write about what you know about. Then I had a product on how to pass the bar exam, that was kind of my first successful product. And then I ended up those markets, the law market wasn't quite big enough for me to really make a living off of it.
Yeah.
And so I ended up partnering with a guy who was a dating expert. He was like the front facing expert, and I was like the behind the scenes person who did the marketing. And for the next 8 years, for the first half of my marketing career, I really was that behind the scenes type person, kind of like, writing a lot of copy, doing all these marketing promotions, running the business. And I did that for a little bit. Then eventually, people were kind of wondering like how I did it. And then I kind of got into the marketing education space where I started showing people, teaching them how to do marketing, how to grow a business. And I started coaching people on how to grow a business, which is what I'm doing today.
That's incredible. And I think the first big point to realize here is like, even though Ron was in law school, he had his destination, he had where he wanted to go, or was like society was telling him to go. He still explored reading a few books. Like people don't
Yes.
realize that it's such a minor commitment of time and money to learn
Hmm.
something new. We
For
think it's got to
sure.
be this big overhaul, and it's like, no, just If you're
Hmm.
interested in a topic, if you're interested in cryptocurrency, the economy, politics, anything, just pick up a book.
Yeah, it's kind of an amazing thing. Like, books are really like there's fewer things more high leverage you can do than like read a good book, especially like if you want to learn something, for example, because so, for example, I've written a book. My book is it's unfortunately not yet on Amazon. It's called The Profit Cookbook, 35 revenue recipes guaranteed to multiply your coaching income. And really, this book is it's about 180 pages. And this book literally has like almost everything I know. No, not
Hmm.
exactly that, but a good portion of everything that I know when it comes to marketing business. And these are things that I've spent like almost 2 decades of my life learning. And anybody who through a lot of trial and error, I've also invested a lot of money in my own marketing education, hiring experts, joining, mastermind groups and things like that. So somebody could buy that book and I think it's like $7 on my website. And they can literally buy that book and get like my 20 years of experience, for example. And I was just, there's so many examples that like, you can get somebody's like all of their knowledge or a lot of the knowledge that might have taken them years, decades to compile and just get it handed to you on a silver platter. So there really is there's really no better kind of, method for learning than reading books, I would say.
Absolutely. And like nowadays, there's only like three ways of changing your life at all. It's literally the people you talk to, the books you read, and then whatever you consume TV wise, YouTube wise, podcast wise. Like there's intakes and outtakes. And a lot of
Hmm.
people, that's why the conversations you have impact how you think. Like if you're
Hmm.
only talking about drama or only talking about negative, it's going to be negative mindset. But if you're
Hmm.
able to pick up a book, and like this is what got me into reading, is like you literally pick up the book and you look at the author and you look at like Ron, marketing 20 years, let me learn all these skills. Or you pick up like a Ray Dalio book where he's like, hedge
Yeah,
fund.
totally, for sure. Yeah, 100%.
You're
Great example.
talking to the main person who spent hours and hours and hours
Hmm.
and hours to compound this,
For
and
sure.
you're having the conversation with them, and it's one-sided. You're just listening, which a lot of
Hmm.
people have an issue with, but
Hmm.
it really opens the door to what is out there and what is possible. So
Yeah, absolutely.
so when you were going through selling those courses, how did you think about that and like how'd you overcome rejection? Because I know throughout that process, you're probably like, "Ah, I don't know if I'm doing this right. Like, should I stay with this? Is this the plan?"
Yeah, yeah. Like I think yeah, I remember it's a good question. I'm just trying to think of that kind of like those early days. So when I did my one of the things that I really had going for me towards the beginning is that I was really like I really got involved in like the Dan Kennedy stuff. And this really was before uh obviously things are much different these days where there's a new marketing expert where
Every single where you have no idea.
everybody's an expert. But like when I really found out about really his whole idea of like, direct response marketing, the idea of like, he would just have a really different way, a kind of a radical at the time way of like looking at things about how you talk to customers, how you actually nurture them, how you follow up with them and things like that. So the point I'm getting at is that when I entered the law market, for example, I really felt like I had like an advantage. Like I have like this competitive advantage that like because I was going to have better marketing than the competition, if that makes sense. So that kind of allowed me to have like I kind of came in with a lot more confidence than I might have expected, or
Yeah.
that the normal somebody else might have expected. And then what ended up happening was I ended up selling like my first really for the first year or so. Like I ended up overall stuff worked pretty good. That was a thing.
Yeah.
So that kind of that kind of helped with my confidence. I ended up my first ever program I had. It was like a $400 course, and I remember when I sold the first one of those. And then
Oh yeah.
fun story. I actually because I actually went to at the law schools, all the law students would have like a cubby where they would get their like mail or whatnot. And you could
Yeah.
basically put flyers in there.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So like
great.
I physically went down to the law school and put my flyer, which is basically, it would look like a magazine ad where it basically said like, here's blah, 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 blah. Go to this website to get this free report. And then this free report this is like really old school kind of marketing tactics. Then that sold my $400 program or $397 at the time. And I remember like I opened up my email one day and I saw there was the first sale, and to this day it's still like the most excited I've ever been to make a sale ever. This was back in 2007. And then that was earlier in the year. And then the next summer, because the law school, the bar exam is in July. I was really focused on the California bar exam because that's where I was living. And the bar exam is in July. So the summer, that's like the time to sell. So kind of, I think it was like May and June. That's I guess even before that. So it's probably around April, May, June. That was like the peak months. And at the
Yeah.
time, I did pretty well. I was spending money on Google AdWords at the time after I kind of graduated from doing the guerrilla marketing style,
Yeah.
and that actually worked pretty well that summer. And then unfortunately, the next summer it didn't. I don't know. It just didn't work as well. And then so that would have been early 2008, and that's when I was kind of figuring that it just wasn't a big enough market. Like it was just there
Ye-
was because like go ahead.
Yeah, because it was so like it's niche, but
Yeah, because
but
yeah,
the
and I was specifically looking. Law school is 3 years. I was specifically looking to reach third year law students. So it's just like it was just like so so
niche.
niche. So it was just like not that it was impossible to read them, but for me to really like make
Get it going.
real money, it would just have been difficult. And so then I ended up getting into my then I graduated, I guess you could say, to my dating business, and that's when I had with a partner. And that one I was in a pretty fortunate position because the expert I worked with, he had a little bit of a following. He had some good things going on. He was a kind of a good. He didn't have a huge following, but he had a pretty good loyal following, and he was pretty well positioned in his market. But he didn't like know marketing, so same thing. I came in there with like some good marketing, and we were able to do really really good at the very beginning. And this is one of
So
those things where go ahead.
so for him, so basically from your experience of you doing the guerrilla marketing and the Google AdWords, then you had this guy who you see a lot of it today where there's social media or influencers who know how to captivate the audience, but they don't know how to sell on the back
Yeah,
end.
yeah, exactly. It was that type of situation. And so same kind of thing back that market didn't really they didn't the marketing that I ended up doing that we ended up doing, it was really effective. And so for the first about how long was it? Pretty much for the first that was late 2008 and then going into 2009. Yeah, pretty much for the first year almost everything we did worked. I was pretty lucky. Like
Oh, so,
almost everything, but then things stopped working. At some point, as they always do, and then we had to get some. We had some. We had to kind of dust
innovate
ourselves
and
back
change.
off and innovate and all that. But so I was pretty lucky in the sense that I think it was kind of a combination of like you're almost like that blind faith, I guess, where you just like, you're just, oh, like, I got the system, it's going to work. And then it's like, you're not jaded yet with stuff like not working. So that's kind of, that's how we were able to get some good success in those early days.
Absolutely. And like when you really sit there and think about it, just for the audience to understand, is that whenever you start a business, like that first win, like that first sale is the one that you keep chasing. You keep chasing that.
For sure. Yeah.
And
100%.
and then you get other clients and you get stuff, but it takes a long time to build out the skill set of what you're actually trying to do because we're constantly innovating and you constantly
Hmm.
have to keep trying new things and get better and spend money on the ads. And you're like, am I wasting money? I don't know. Like, we're gonna
Hmm.
try this out and see. And so for you with the dating coach, like how did you guys end up making it work? Did you put like a coaching program on the back end or like what did you end up selling or was it
Yeah. So I remember this pretty vividly. So so the first thing we did, we actually launched a coaching program at the very beginning.
Yeah.
like a hiring coaching program. It was a year long, like $5,000 coaching program. And nobody in that market did this at the time. This was legitimately an innovative type thing. That was the thing that kind of got us that initial momentum. Um, so there's a digression about, I'm not going to get into it. So that was that. And then we ended up launching, that was our first thing. Then we ended up launching a CD of the month club type thing. This was like really popular back in those days. That was like $29 a month. That worked pretty well. And then we ended up about 6 months later, we ended up launching we did a big launch for like a $497 course, like a $500 course. And we ended up, whatever the math is, we ended up selling about $65,000 worth of those
Oh,
courses.
nice.
So that so it was pretty cool. Like, and we did like a big proper launch. It was pretty innovative. That worked pretty well. Then this was middle of 2009. And then I don't really remember what happened between then and then. I was like quitting my job after that. So like that was a thing. But the big thing that it was actually a year later, I remember this pretty vividly. It was July of 2010. That's when we did a big launch. This is when I quit my job at the end of 2009. So I was working full time after that. And then really for most of 2000, the beginning part of 2010, I was really working on doing this big launch for like a big affiliate launch where I had a lot of people promoting us at the same time. And that ended up being a really big successful. The product it was like $97, and then there was like a $97 per month membership on the
Nice.
back end. And yeah, no, we ended up doing like $300,000 from
Oh,
that.
not yeah, because so here's the thing. When you really think about it, like you just saw three different options. Like one was a big coaching, which was really high ticket. Then you had a middle ticket with the course, and then you had the low ticket with the CD. And then you start to realize that you're like, hey, maybe if we test this out at the 97, but now people are paying 97 a month. So now it's like 1,000, 1,200 bucks every single year. It comes out a little bit differently, but they're all it is the packaging and the presentation, which is
Yeah, a lot of the information was similar for sure, 100%.
because that's the most important thing that people need to realize is that whenever you're going into something, it's all how you package it. And it's how you
Mhm.
package everything, it changes it all. So while this is going on, you're building out the business. And then when did you start traveling to Colombia and starting that experience?
That would have been a little bit later. So yeah, just to close one loop. So it was really that launch in 2010. That's the one that really allowed me to really that's when I was really starting to make like kind of good, like not amazing, but like good money where I was able to kind of um, that's when I was kind of that's when I started making like at least $100,000 a year, where I was able to kind of live a little bit better. And then I took my first trip to Colombia in 2013. So it was a couple of years after that.
Gotcha. Yeah, because it's important. And I want you to bring it up that it's important because everyone wants to go, oh, just get a job and then just go, or just do this, or just quit your job, or just do that. And
Mhm.
it's not always that easy. Like Ron's telling us how he worked for 4 or 5 years on this thing, 6 years before even taking the trip and checking out and
Yeah,
trying to
and to
see an
be fair,
opportunity.
yeah, a lot of that is just because I was really I was nervous, I wanted to,
Of
like I was
course,
kind of
we're always
afraid to do it.
nervous.
Yeah. So yeah, so anyways, that's kind of but yeah, to answer your question, yeah, I ended up finally taking the plunge in 2013.
And how long did you go for that time?
So yeah, I ended up I went to Ecuador for the first time. I went to Quito, Ecuador, because that was like kind of a hot expat spot at the time. And I went there for 3 months. I had a buddy who was living in Medellin, Colombia. This is back in 2013. This is like way, when
Before,
people
yeah.
are still freaked out about Colombia, but they were
Yeah.
even way more freaked out at that moment in time. And so then I had a buddy who was living there, and he's like, "Hey, you should come to Medellin." And so before I headed back to the U.S. from Ecuador, I wanted to go to another country, so I went to Medellin. I was there for about 10 days or so, and I just really fell in love with the city,
Yeah.
with the country, and then I always kind of wanted to go back there. So I ended up to give you the exact I'll just give you the full math, because I would keep dabbling. It took me a while to really totally embrace like the full-time international living. So I in 2015, I went back and I was there for 3 months. Then I came back. Then it was 2000, at the end of 2017. That's when I was like, you know what, I'm gonna go. I'm doing it. I'm taking the plunge. I'm going full time. And so I ended up end of 2017, 2000, beginning of 2018, I ended up moving to Colombia. I got rid of my apartment, I put all my stuff in storage, and I actually was there for about I was there for 7 months, 8 months.
Oh,
The
wow.
thing there is I would have really stayed there longer, but I didn't have a visa. And so you can be there 6 months out of the year, um, unless you have like a longer term visa. And I just I kept looking into how to get a visa, like, like I could try getting like a student visa, but that it wasn't the right thing to do. And then like I actually had friends at the time, they would actually get like medical visas because they would get like braces or something like that. But anyways, like long story short, I nothing really made sense visa wise for me at the time. So my plan was to this would have been this is so that was this was like July, I think July, August of 2018 is when I moved back from Colombia. And my plan was, it's funny how these things work out. My plan at the time was, okay, I'm going to go back to the US. I'm going to be there for 4 or 5 months. I'm going to be there till the end of the year. Then I'm going to go back to Colombia. And then what ended up happening, of course, is I ended up going to San Diego, where I had quite a few friends who were living there. And it's like one of those things like objects in motion stay in motion. It's like, oh, I was planning on being there till the end of the year. But then like there was this big marketing conference, the Traffic and Conversion Summit, if you're familiar with
Yes.
that. That was in San Diego in February, I think. So like, oh, then I was like, oh yeah, I might as well stay there till February. And then there was
Yeah.
like another thing. So long story short, I ended up staying in Colombia for like no, no, I'm sorry. I stayed in San Diego for until the end of or at the beginning of 2020. Then COVID had happened, and then actually, hold on. So I was there till the end of 2020. To the end of 2020, I was in San Diego, and it was at the end of 2019. That's when I met my wife, who's Colombian, and then I ended up moving back to Colombia at the end of 2020, where I was there for 2 years.
Oh, wow. Because of COVID. Yeah.
Or not because of COVID. So okay, I'll give you the exact story. So I met my wife, but I know we're going a few different directions here. I met my wife at the end of 2019. We really fell in love, and I was planning on moving back to Colombia. I had a ticket to go back to Colombia April. It was April 5th, 2020. That's when my ticket was. And then
Yeah.
unfortunately, the
COVID. Yeah.
COVID happened. The country was shut down in 2000 at March 2020, as we all know. And so it was a super bummer. My wife was in Colombia. I was in the US, or my now wife's at the time. We were just technically just,
Dating. Yeah.
couple. Um, and so, yeah, we did that. We were like a COVID romance, whatever you want to call it. And like seven months where we weren't able to see each other. And then finally I moved back. I made it to Colombia in October of 2020. We got married a couple of months after that. And then I was there for a couple of years before we came back to the US. And now we're heading back there once again next year.
And when you're doing all of this, how does the tax structure with that work? So, like, if you're going to Colombia for 2 years, are you still paying US tax? Like, how does all that work?
Yeah. So the way it works is that, and again, I know enough to be dangerous about this. There are people that can wax poetic about kind of the international tax system and things like that. But essentially, yes. Unfortunately, as a U.S. citizen, no matter what, you always have to pay U.S. taxes. That's
Yeah,
just that's
that's
just how
from
it
what
is.
I heard. Yeah.
Yeah, and they have this thing called the U.S. foreign exclusion tax, which says that if you are spending the majority of your, not the majority, you have to be spending kind of like it's like at least 11 months out of the year. It's like a lot. If you're spending like most of your time, as in like almost all of your time outside of the US, you're not taxed on your first $100,000 of
Oh,
income.
wow.
So it's
That's
pretty good.
interesting.
So yeah, so it's a pretty good, it's yet another reason why it makes sense to spend more time abroad.
Consider some time. Yeah, no, absolutely. And for you, so what's been the draw of like going back to the US and back to Colombia? Like obviously stuff happens, life happens, but is there really it's this idea
Yes.
that like I feel like the idea now of just living in a specific area has like I think it's gonna go extent like I think it's gonna go away down the line. I think people are just gonna kind of formulate and
Yeah.
live in multiple locations.
Yeah, I think there's something to that. So I would honestly say that, so for me personally, I would rather live in Colombia. So that's why I'm planning on moving back there. My current thinking is, so I have a 6 month old daughter, and my initial plan is to be back in Colombia next year, and then probably stay there for a little bit. And then when my daughter is ready to kind of go to school, we're currently leaning towards, raising her and having her go to school in the US. That's kind of our long-term vision as a family. And then yeah, within that, most likely ideally we'll be spending, summers in Colombia,
Yes.
that kind of thing. But really, like right now, again, overall, I think it's, for me personally, I would rather be in Colombia than be in the US, mainly because, not mainly, there's many reasons. But one of the big ones yeah, it's just like, it's that quality of living is better. You can really like live like a king there. One thing we didn't mention was that how, like when I was living in Colombia, I had a cook who would come 5 days a week. I had somebody who came and clean my house and things like that. And yeah, it was just kind of just you just have a higher vibration. You just feel better. You feel very
Well,
taken care of. So things
because
like that. Go ahead.
because you're not spending as much time doing these remedial
Mhm.
tasks.
For sure,
And
100%.
people don't realize that when you spend an hour a day cooking and when you spend 30 minutes a day
100%.
cleaning,
It adds up. 100%.
it adds
Absolutely.
up a lot. And it's like, oh, well, who's going to take care of it? And it's majority of families make enough money where you could eat out, or you could get a meal prep service, or you could get a cleaning person coming more frequently. And that would give you a lot more time. And the reason I'm bringing this up is because a lot of us sit there and complain about these like five, ten, $100 activities that will open up your eyes and give you a lot of your time back so you can enjoy what you actually want to do.
Yeah, for sure. And that's exponentially even easier when you're living like in like South America or other parts of the world as
Absolutely.
well.
Absolutely. So, for you, in regard to the marketing, what are you seeing nowadays in regard to like everything going on? Is it Facebook ads? Because I know it's getting a lot harder regarding Google ads, Facebook ads, and like I know you have other revenue streams that people could look into. So how does that all work?
Well, I mean, if you're asking kind of what's working, the thing, to be honest, I think it's kind of always the same in the sense that, the same things that are working now are this more or less the same things that are working in the past, in the sense that, like, I know people who are still doing well with Facebook ads, for example, or who are doing well with social media. I have clients that have like bigger YouTube channels. I think the thing is that when it comes to things that are more saturated, like Facebook ads, for example, you just have to be more dialed in with your messaging. I think that's a big part of it. You have to be more dialed in with your messaging. You often have to be more specific with your like with your targeting, for example. At the same time, you want to make sure that you really need to have your entire business model mapped out. Like that's why,
Yes.
like, you have to have, like, typically most, I don't know if I'm sure there's exceptions, but there's very few people who are making ads work without like a high-end offer on the back end, for
I
example.
was gonna say because like basically for the audience, like the way ads work are you run the ads, but you're gonna run $20, $50, $100 a day, and if you're not able to convert these people, let alone have them on a monthly recurring stream, it becomes very, very challenging to run these ads because it's just not gonna work. It's just not gonna add. The math's not gonna add up.
Yeah, exactly. Mhm.
Absolutely. So, and you said you have in your book, there's like a bunch of different revenue streams that people can access. What are those different ways of doing that? Like, what are some of the?
So I call them revenue recipes. So what we mean by that is, so there's only really 5 ways to grow a business. I learned this from my friend Paul Lumberg, so giving him credit. So one of them, I call them profit food groups. So one of them is, raising your prices. So if you just raise your prices, even if you didn't do anything the same, your business would go up. The other one is selling more to your existing customers and retaining them longer. The third one is increasing your sales conversions. The fourth one is getting more leads. And the fifth one is essentially executing better and faster. The idea of all of these is that if all you did was this one thing, and if you didn't do anything else in your business, like if you just got more leads, even if everything stayed the same, your business would grow. If you increase your sales conversions by X amount, even if everything stayed the same, your business would grow. And so, and the idea, of course, is if you optimize all of them, then they can actually have exponential impact. They compound on one another. So in the book, I have there are these 5 different categories, and within each of these categories, I have what's called different revenue recipes, if that makes sense. So, for
Yeah.
example, if you take a look at like sales conversions, in the book I give different a bunch of different ways to increase your sales conversions. For example, like these would be like techniques, strategies, things that you could just go out and implement. That kind of like a cookbook. If you just like implement the recipe, then you're going to increase your
Oh, that
revenue.
makes sense. Yeah, like actionable tips for people to do to grow their different areas.
Exactly.
100%. So that's pretty cool. And then if someone's looking to just get into coaching or get into business, what do you think would be the main thing to focus on?
So, so let's talk about coaching. If you're looking to get into coaching, so this step one, step zero, it's all about finding that match between what you're good at, like how you can help people, and the whoever your person is, the market that's going to pay for that type of thing. So this
Yeah.
is kind of what it's all about. So if you're starting out, like if a person was starting out and like, hey, I want to get into coaching, that sounds awesome. I want to quit my job. I would say, okay, great. Then I would ask them, I would talk to them. I would figure out like what are their marketable skills that somebody might pay to have them coach on, for example.
Yeah.
They might have like ability to they might have some marketing skills. They might have some skills. So they might have like project management skills or leadership skills or something. They might be able to help people with like mindset, or they might be a healer or whatnot. So then I would basically figure out, okay, based on this, which of these is going to be the most marketable? And then, of course, the big categories for are helping people with health, wealth, and relationships. If you can help
Yes.
people make money, that's awesome. If you can help them be more healthy, that's awesome. If you can help them optimize their relationships, that's awesome as well. So that's what I would be leaning towards. And then once we kind of have a hypothesis of like how they can help people and who might be a good fit for this, then you got to go out there and you got to market, right? So then you got
Yeah.
to you got to make an offer. You have to go talk to people. You have to use whatever channels you have. That might be the contacts from your phone, the people you connect to on social media. Um, there might be some partners you can tap into. Then we need to just get in front of people and we need to be able to make them an offer. And then once we figure out what our offer is, once we have like a coaching package that works, then going from like zero to $100,000 a year is not that difficult. It's just all about getting good at selling that one offer. That's kind of
Yeah.
the version.
And staying in the niche and staying
Yeah,
focused.
once you find and it's once you find a good that message to market match, a good offer for a good audience, yeah, you definitely want to stay focused on that one audience for sure.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So do you think it makes sense to have a remote business where you can travel? And if so, like how often should people travel? The reason I'm saying this is just because it's something I really enjoy. I think travel is
Mhm.
awesome and but I think it takes time to build that remote life out and remote build
Well,
that.
yeah, I mean, in the sense that, yeah, I mean, I definitely think there's a lot of benefits to having a remote business for sure. It's like having a coaching business, consulting business, or if you're selling information products. I mean, a lot of things that people are doing are remote these days. And yeah, kind of going back to what we said before, obviously everybody teaches their own. Like everybody has their different rhythms and things like that. But if you have a business that where you can work from anywhere, then I I definitely recommend kind of looking into looking into living in another country for sure, and especially um like if you're listening to this and you're like single and you're like under the age of 40, I would full stop. I would almost shake you and say, dude, you really should. I highly recommend you spend some time living in another country, because not only are you going to get those life experiences, it's a good time. You're not gonna. It's gonna be hard to do when you're older, especially if you're married and having kids and things like that. And then also it's that huge opportunity to really, really build exponential wealth, as we talked
A
about
hu-
earlier.
100%. And the other big thing I think that's super valuable is that when you're in these locations for maybe 3, 6 a month, like one of the biggest changes I think that happens is that you don't take your time for granted. So what I mean by that is like if you finish work on Monday at like 6, if you're in the States, it might be make dinner, watch TV,
Mhm.
read a book, go to bed. If you're in a different country, you're like, hey, we got to eat out tonight. Like we got to go explore, go for a walk, because there's a shortness on how long you're going to be there, and that's something I've always found. I'm not sure if that's
Mhm.
relevant to you, but to me,
Mhm.
it was like whenever you're like that's why when you go on vacation, most people will sleep less because they're like, I have to get
Right.
every minute out of this experience.
Yeah. Mhm.
So when you shorten the time that you're actually in a place, and even if it's 3 months, you're like, dude, I gotta go see that play, see that experience, go to that sporting event, do that thing. But meanwhile, when you're in the same place for so long, you just take it for granted and you're like, yeah, we don't do that. Like and
Yeah,
and
for sure.
and the funny thing is that you experience more of these things in foreign places than you do in your own place. So
Yeah,
yeah,
100%.
I think it's massive. I think it's a huge thing for people to realize, and it's hard to put that time limit when you've been living in the same place for 5 years, 10 years, 20 years.
Yeah, for sure. 100%.
Yeah, so I mean that's one of the biggest things for me. And then is there any tips that you would give people who are considering doing this? Like, yeah, I know you found Colombia and that was great for you, but is there any way that you think people should go about it, whether it's a 10-day, 20-day, three
Oh, I
month?
see what you're saying. Yeah, what I would recommend is, yeah, I think you want to spend, so yeah, if I was like, so the thing I would do if I was, and this is kind of a common kind of digital nomad thing is, I would do some research. I would look at places that I would consider, I would research and find like a few places that I might consider staying for a longer period of time. And I know the hotspots are pretty much like there's places in South America, like Colombia is popular. There's Argentina is popular. I know people who are in Brazil. Um, then there's like Southeast Asia, which I have not really spent a ton of time there, but there's places there. There's places in Eastern Europe that those are kind of like some of the popular places. Also Mexico, like I know there's a lot of entrepreneurs in Playa del Carmen, for example.
Yes.
There's another city called San Miguel, which is like in the mountains, which is another kind of expat. So anyway, so I would take a look at. Obviously, there's way more places, but those are some of the places. So what I would do is, I would do some research on which of these, of like some of the ones I mentioned, maybe look at some of the other ones, and I would just um and I would plan on maybe just doing some experiments. Like, yeah, maybe I'm going to stay here for a couple weeks. Then I'm going to stay here for a couple weeks. I'm going to stay here for a couple weeks. Probably like 2 to 4 weeks is probably a good time. It's a good amount of time to kind of get the rhythm of whether you would like want to be there for a longer period of time. And then once you find a place you like, then I would consider staying there for a longer period of time.
Yeah, I completely agree. I actually did it in the US where we traveled around for 8 months and we literally stayed in each place for 3 weeks to probably 6 weeks. And you just stress test everything and you start to
Yeah,
walk around and
exactly.
see if you like the area. And like, so, because I think it's crazy now that people are like, yeah, I just signed a lease for a year. And I'm like, you never been here before, bro? What do you
Right,
mean?
right, right.
That's crazy. Because to me, it's like, how does someone make that decision so fast without knowing? And I think it's just you want to take action right away, and I get that, but I think there's a component of like go on a 2 week trip to the place, see if you
Mhm.
like it. You don't have to uproot your entire life and
Yeah, I
then
totally agree.
try that approach. Just because there's so much out there and it's never been cheaper and it's just never been easier at this point, especially like going from the US to Colombia. Like if you look at these flights, like they're not they're pretty low cost. Like you can get there and
Yeah,
try
for
it out
sure.
for an easy amount of experience. Like it's really not that hard to
For
experience a
sure.
lot of these things.
100%.
Yeah, absolutely. So, is there anything that you think you'd want to leave the audience with?
Um, yeah, it's really what I said before. Like, yeah, if you're just I would definitely be open to this idea of geo arbitrage. Again, especially if you're single, if you're single under the age, especially under the age of 30, single under the age of 40, I highly recommend you take a look into it. It's a very big optimization in my experience.
100, and it's just never been around. Like that's the other thing. Like this hasn't been relevant. Some people
Hmm.
have done it who are older, but like the flights have not been this affordable since they
Hmm.
are like since it's been like that. So I think it's a really important
Yeah.
thing. And then one more question before we close up. You noted that you had a couple clients like in different locations, different countries. How do you first of all attract them, and then how do you kind of think about time zones and working and all of that stuff?
Yeah, so as far as time zones go, I've been pretty fortunate because the only real bad time zone, like the real bad time zone is if there people are like in Southeast Asia, for example. But I've had people like I've had a couple clients who are in Australia, and that's not so bad. That's when I would have to talk to them like later on in my day, like 5, 6 p.m., which is their morning.
Okay.
That's kind of the way you make that work. And then I've had clients who are in the same thing. If I have clients who are in Europe, again, not ideal, but oftentimes I can talk to them kind of my morning, and that'll be there later on in the day. Typically, it isn't really a problem. So you just have to kind of go with the flow on that one, if that makes sense. As far as attracting clients, I mean, the majority of my clients are in would be in North America, but I do have, you know, the internet is obviously like my kind of part of the industry or my niche. A lot of there's a decent amount of them that are located in the UK, and some of them, there's a few that are in Australia as well. So yeah, I'm not specifically targeting those countries or anything. It just kind of works out that way.
Comes to me. That's awesome. So, Ron, where can people learn more about you and hear more if they want to get in touch?
Yeah, probably the best place to you can go to my website, ronreich.com. So that's RONREICH.com. I have some cool free stuff there. And also if you go to my personal Facebook profile, I post a lot of content on there. So feel free to send me a message or add me as a friend, send me a message, and then we'll love to say hi.
Awesome. Appreciate the time.
Yeah, thanks for having me. This was awesome.
Thank you for reaching the end of the podcast. For that, we'll give you a complimentary coaching session in the link below with Edwards Consulting. Hope to see you there and have a great day and keep clocking in.